The struggles for me was like, like I might not get things as fast as other people.
I had noticed something about Brian when he was little, but I didn't really think too much of it. He used to line up his Hot Wheels cars, and he would line them up in the same way. They were in no order that you or I could figure out. They weren't color order or type of car order or anything, but he had his own order. And how I knew this is on the weekend, he and Gabby would go to their aunt's house for the weekend. And so one day before he got home, I switched 3 cars, and he had probably 20 or 21 cars lined up. And I switched 3. He came in the kitchen about a half an hour after he had been home. I was cooking something to eat or whatever. And he said, "Ma, and you switched my cars." I said, "What cars, Brian?" And I tried to play dumb. And he was like, "Mom, 3 of my cars are switched." And he was dead serious. And like I said, I'm pretty analytical and pretty routine or ordered. I'm definitely ordered. And there was no order of his cars. They weren't the same make or the same. So he had an obsession about cars. And I noticed that. So I just said, but it didn't rise to a level of concern.
First day, I remember it very vividly. I was walking around Kennedy, it being a 3-story school. Like, what am I gonna do? I have no idea where I'm going. I'm lost. And it's huge. There's like 2,000 kids here. What do I do? I was a shorter person. I always have felt short. And at Kennedy, like everything felt so huge to me. I was 14 and like everything to me felt huge. And it was kind of like one of those things. It was an intimidation thing for me. Everybody here looks like they know where they're going and what they're supposed to be doing. Me, I'm that lost kid that doesn't know where anything is.
When he started school, he knew his address, phone number in Head Start, so we're talking like 4. Then he went to pre-K to Ready, Set, Learn the summer before kindergarten, and I thought everything was okay. And when I went to the last day of the program, and the teacher said, "Brian is a little like maybe he was out of his seat more regularly, or there was some concerns," and I'm like, okay. So we had an appointment to see a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist watched him play. He said, "Brian is a typical little kid," and that was his assessment. So I didn't worry because I had done everything I needed to do to comply with any concerns. So then he goes to kindergarten, half-day kindergarten. And I always laugh because it seemed like by the middle of the week, they would call me and tell me that Brian needed to come home. And I'm like, "Really, Brian? You can't stay in school for 2.5 hours? And this is kindergarten."
Like throughout elementary school, people would pick on me for like my sister. Like they knew like she was physically fragile. And it would like just build up in me. And like it probably was the most painful thing I had to go through elementary school and part of middle school. And finally in middle school, I had gotten in so much like trouble at school, they wanted to send me up to Hosterman up in New Hope. And my mom had got a crew together and fought for me to stay in Bloomington School District.
But they're not going to listen to just a parent, so I had to kind of pull in a whole bunch of people and networking things that I know how to do from councils I was on. In fact, we had the psychiatrist from the Autism Society came to the meeting. Somebody from the disability law community came in support of Brian is not going to be out of Bloomington. You all need to find a place. And the other thing, autism at that time was rising, the incidence of autism. So if are you going to send every kid with autism out of the school district? I don't think so. So you need to figure this out. You're a big enough school district. And that's one thing I have to say, the positive of all that, Bloomington did stay at the table to figure it out.
And so they finally sent me over to Oak Grove, and that was a lot better of a transition. And something finally clicked in my head, and I think it came from Gabby saying, "I have to do better."
His homeroom was a teacher who was an autism specialist. Then he was mainstreamed to departmental classes. Well, he started having trouble like right away. Being in special ed, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, kind of dumbs down people's expectations of what you can do. And so if you're kind of labeled a kid with disabilities or special needs, we still are in a world where people talk about kids who ride the little bus.
I got through it pretty darn good, I would say. High school, though, the fact that I spent a lot of time really not learning anything in middle school probably affected a lot of what I could have been doing in high school. Me not being really good with science or more advanced math, I think it really caused a lot of problems for me throughout high school, and me like always feeling like there'd be like we'd get to points in like certain class, like mainstream classes, and I would feel like just the idiot in class, just sitting here trying to figure out what all this means and what am I supposed to be doing. And it was hard. Going through high school knowing that I am not as smart as I could be, just, it kind of broke me.
And no one offered, okay, maybe this kid is grieving. His best friend in the world, his sister, died at home. How traumatic is that for anybody? No one looked at the fact that, you know, why is Brian storming out of a classroom?
It finally hit me to say, if I really want to succeed in school, I have to go in with a positive attitude, because if I go into school dreading it, it's not going to go well for me at all. And so finally I said, you know what, I just need to keep my head up high. I need to believe in myself, because if I don't, then, you know, it's not going to work out well for me. And so I did. I had advanced child development senior year, and since I had enjoyed working with kids already, and I already had some experience with my aunt and growing up with my sister and so many other experiences, we would go over to the Pond Center, which was literally walking distance from Kennedy. And we would go read to the ESL kids that English isn't their first language. And so like we would actually read stories to them, and I actually connected with them. And because all the kids loved me, you know, I'd be there for like 2 hours. I love kids, and it's my biggest passion. So doing that throughout high school, like through senior year, you know, it helped get me through it. So my biggest thing for senior year, if I had to give advice to somebody, I would tell them, you know, senior year, it is what you make it. Find something about senior year that you absolutely enjoy and say, you know what, you know, maybe this part of my day isn't going well, but I have this to look forward to.
Cup overflowing with knowledge. They say I didn't have the brains to go to college.
And then I started going to the Bloomington Transition Center the following September. And I've been there, this is my third and final year there.
It was a good blend of independent living skills, learning how to write checks, how to cook maybe, do laundry, housekeeping stuff. So a lot of independent living skills, as well as starting to really look at what kind of career you would like.
Job-wise, I'd probably just want to like working with kids. Graphics is becoming more of a passion for me, so working in like a shop, I'd like to do that more. I'm going to Dakota County Tech. I'm taking the graphics communication course, and my instructor, Trina, she's played a very big role in my life the last 2 years.
Trina was another person who challenged all her kids to do their very best. She pushed them. And I think that is another thing that's kind of missing in most of the special ed programming, that they don't really push. They want you to conform to school rules or whatever, but they don't really push you academically.
I was struggling a little bit, but then I caught on to it. I was like, this was something I didn't even think I was capable of doing, but that's what Trina does. She pushes you to do the things that you don't think you're capable of, but she knows that you are.
Just her believing in him, just her being excited about him as a person, being respectful, but wanting him to be the best. Okay, now you said that you like to draw, so now let's see some of your drawings.
Sometimes I'm like, Trina, there's no way I could get this done. She's like, you're going to get it done. And finally I'll be like, okay, I'm going to get this done. And I do get it done.